Good afternoon. Welcome back after the break, and we are ready to start the session. The session is about the roles and duties of SLDC, WRPC, and RLDC for the smooth implementation of DSM. I have two expert champions here with me, Shri Satyanarayan ji and Shri Samir Chandra Saxena ji, to deliver their important presentations and share the knowledge here with us today. I would like to ask sirs who would like to give the presentation first. Should we begin with you, Satyanarayan ji, or
yeah, it's okay.
So we already have the pre-recorded presentation of Satyanarayan ji, which I will play it right now, and he is available with us for the question and answer.
Hello and welcome. Myself Satyanarayan S. I am working as a member secretary of the Western Region Power Committee. This session is shared by myself and Shri Suni sir, and I would just keep myself limited to a small talk. The topic given to me was the role of SLDCs in the DSM mechanism, and I thought I will just modify the role a bit to include the role of WRPC. Since WRPC Secretariat, to which I belong, does this basic job of preparing the commercial accounts, I think it will be interesting to know what we do. I have been in the Western region for quite some time here, almost from '94. And I have worked in the load dispatch as well as in the offline. I've been associated with system studies and power system protection. And I have been working on commercial as well as operations. So I know a little bit about most of the things here. This topic is shared between myself and Suni, as I said earlier. And so I have a limited but a finite and interesting role. So I'll just appraise you of that. So, and I have recorded this session because I'm sometimes a bit worried about the internet going on and off. So at least the major part of the talk is available. And after this talk is broadcast, I will definitely be there to take any questions from you all. So with these opening remarks, let me go to this presentation. I think I'll take only a short amount of time. Right. So the beginning point of all this is the Western region power map, because it's always nice to begin things on geography. Okay, so the Western region basically comprises of the states of Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra and Goa, and the union territories of Daman and Diu and Dadra and Nagar Haveli. So we will look into this. The next is actually the frequency control problem and how things evolve. I do want to spend a little amount of time on this, not much, little amount of time on this, and that is, see, the grids were not long ago, at least when I joined the job here, we were independent grids. The Western region was independent. I'll just see if I have an all India map. I do have one here. So this broad area is the Western region, and all of this is the Northern region. All of this is the eastern region somewhere here, and this will be the northeast region, all this area, and we have the southern region. Okay, so the grids were initially separate. Exchanges used to take place on HVDC links between north and west and north and south, and the northeast was initially synchronized to the eastern region, and we got synchronized to the eastern region, if memory serves me, around 2003. Then we got interconnected with northern region. So all this soon became one grid. Okay, all this became one grid. And then in 2012, I think this also southern region also not 2012, 2016, I guess, this also got connected, southern region connected, and so now it is today an all India grid. That is what it is. But initially it wasn't like that. Okay, so in the initial days, the grid was something like this. So we were the Western region. I think the demand in those days were around 22,000, 23,000. We were the largest region in the country. We still are a dominant region in the country. And this in those days, we are talking the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 90s. It was essentially a problem of deficit management. Okay, so when the peak used to come, everybody used to simply draw from the central sector whatever is available, and so the frequency used to deviate. From 50 hertz, it used to come down, and I have actually seen and operated the grid even at 48 hertz. But for most of the time, Western region was 49 plus. There were seasonal drawbacks, seasonal deficits, and of course we also had a high frequency regime, okay, in those days. So the mechanisms that the society tried to combat with all these things, the various laws, etc., is in the initial days there was something called as a frequency linked exchange, in the 90s. This is what I remember, and these were the beginnings of an arrangement that, okay, if we start drawing more and at a time when the frequency is less, then we agreed to pay a charge towards that. Now, these are the days, when there was no regulations. Okay, so everything was decided at the RPC level, REB levels as they were called, and they were handled that way. Then once, somewhere when the society went from this 2002 to 2014 era, we got a famous mechanism called as the availability-based tariff. Now, the availability-based tariff was ingenious in the sense that it tried to bring in a frequency, but it was a commercial signal. Like, if the frequency is dropping and you're drawing the power, the cost of the power was heavy, and so that would in some sense deter a person from drawing the power, and it had regulatory support. So once you have a regulatory support, it's much, much stronger than a mutual agreement or an arrangement. And so the ABT flourished from 2002 to 2014. When it was started, of course, nobody wanted it. Nobody wants a change. That's a very human way of looking at the problem. There's nothing wrong in that. But then once you adjust to it, they don't want another change. So we really went through all these ABT mechanism, and I already told you the grids got integrated. And in July 2012, there was a blackout, which really was quite shocking. And we had to gear up to the fact that as a nation, like we are integrating with each other, and so we need to have a stable mechanism. So the DSM mechanism was actually introduced in 2014 onward, and it's turning out to be a wonderful mechanism. There's also this balancing mechanism in Maharashtra earlier. See, both Maharashtra, if you can put this area as a square, Maharashtra would have its interchange with the central grid as per the ABT. Okay, as per the ABT, it would do all its adjustments. But to whom to pass on these penalties or whom to pass on these rewards was decided by them, by the MERC in those days, and by a totally different mechanism, which was called as a balancing mechanism. And I, as an individual, I still like that mechanism. It was based on they used to calculate the highest participation cost, etc. And it was a nice mechanism. It was a bit complicated, but it worked well. And now, of course, MERC is switching on to be in line with the DSM mechanism of the central, which is also good. And so that's in fact the topic of this entire workshop. But this is also okay. It's not very bad. It was quite. It had quite some kind of a challenging way of looking at the problem. Okay. So FLEs were, as I told you, we started moving with the first attempt to control and in the deficit scenarios, ABT introduced the commercial signals, and now DSM we are going towards the schedule-wise management. Now we cannot take the risk, as I already explained, this integration of the grid. More integration means definitely stability, inertia increases. Okay, so the frequency deviations will be less. Put it this way, that if a 700 megawatt load throw off raise the frequency by almost say 1 hertz in isolated days of WR, now of course the same thing will not raise it by that much. So that's the meaning of the frequency wise stability. But because of this integration, yes, because the inertia has increased, security is going to get focused in the days to come, because in some sense the risk has also increased, because if we start collapsing and under the presence of some synchronizing force getting destabilized, and then of course it's going to be a widespread catastrophe, and there's nothing one can do about it. We can take all kind of precautions, but blackouts are not unknown. Even in the developed countries, they do happen. But when we operate with a less risk-taking approach, then it actually strengthens the grid and the chances of a blackout comes down considerably. And of course, nowadays the markets are also opening up, the renewable challenges are coming, so the power sector is undergoing lots of challenges, right? So now let's come to my topic proper, the deviation settlement mechanism. By now already the talks have been done. So it is a weekly account that we issue, and we get the data by Thursday, and we have to clear it by Tuesday. And the whole idea is to discourage deviation from a scheduled energy by all the entities, which is basically what I said as scheduled based monitoring. So if this is a week that is running, and this week runs, our commercial accounting starts from Monday and ends on a Sunday. Then the RLDC gets all its data from its various sources, and as per the regulation by Thursday they should prepare, but they can take a day or two also more, no, not an issue. As long as we can issue the accounts by Tuesday, we do manage to do this. So generally they will send us the first list by Thursday. Sometimes some errors will come in this, so they will again resend the data and then we rework the problem. So this is a typical DSM schedule. Now there will be errors, though our full attempt is to remove the errors. There will be an error. So in case of an error, it is the responsibility of the entity to bring it to the notice of RLDC or WRPC Secretariat as soon as you can, so that we can revise it promptly. In some cases, we can even withdraw the old bill. Now this is important because if we don't withdraw the bill, and we don't have any provision to waive off the interest charges, like suppose you were to pay 10 lakhs, and let's say that you are actually receivable 2 lakhs, but unfortunately there's an error which makes you that you got to pay 10 lakhs. Then you got to make this payment if we don't withdraw the bill or if we don't revise it properly, and that is promptly. And this is as per an understanding which we derived in the WRPC, that we give, I think, about 10 days time. That's there in the bill. Within that, you have to tell if there is any serious error. Okay. Now, another important thing we got to remember is that the generators of nuclear and hydro, they are not under the purview of the DSM. So whatever schedules are done are only operational schedules. Like a nuclear generator will say, okay, I plan to have this is my schedule. He declares that as a schedule. But because they are not in the DSM bracket, so they will not be able to, so whatever schedules they get, I have to replace that data by the actuals. So if you are really looking at the RLDC website and the RPC website accounts and going into detail, and you find that why this difference is coming, this is only because of this particular reason, and there should be ideally no other reason. So now the DSM account basically is what? The computation problem is, I need to figure out what is the schedule of the seller. So I mean, if there is a generator, I should know his blockwise schedule. Okay. But when it comes to buyers, it is not so easy, because the buyer will have so many schedules. You will have long term and you will have short term. You will have various generators. He'll purchase from the exchange, etc. So I have to collect the data from every part of that thing, add it up, and then apply the losses, etc., and arrive at his total schedule. Okay. So this is what we do. And while doing this, I have to take care of the precautions I already told for the nuclear and hydro. So our program does that. Then the next is an actual meter data, and again for the buyers, it is not just for a generator, it's usually 1 point, just a couple of meters here and there. But for the buyers, this will be like Gujarat, for example. You will have so many tie points, about 25 to 30 tie points. So each and every point has to be included. If I miss out one, okay, for example, there will be an error. Okay, so this happens. Okay, so this is how we can compute the actual meter data. Once you're ready with this, you know what is his schedule, and you know what is his actuals. Okay, so then we are ready to do the DSM processing. So the DSM processing basically comprises of 4 parts of it. One is the deviation charges, capping, additional deviation charges, sign deviation. Okay, the deviation charges is whatever is the schedule. My actual minus schedule is the unscheduled interchange. And there's a complicated rate, frequency dependent rate after this. For DSM, you can find it out. I don't want to go into detail. That is probably it would have been covered by CRC representatives. And if it is not covered, I think you'll have to explore it on your own. So these are the deviation charges, which comes by a matrix. Then the deviation settlement mechanism is actually trying to put some restriction or cappings. So if the frequency is lower than 50 hertz and if the person is underdrawing, then in the old ABT mechanism there were less amount of cappings, but they were introduced as time went on, and of course now it's much strict, so you can permit a variation of only this much. So beyond that, it's not there's a capping. So I mean, if it is frequency is going low and you go on underdrawing, you'll get only a small benefit and not much. So I have to calculate that. Similarly for the high frequency as per this table. Okay. Then there is an additional charge for the deviation which actually gets calculated by either these or these two formulas. So let's take somebody's schedule is 1000. So 12% of that is 120, and that is less than 150 megawatt. If so, and if he's overdrawing in this range of 12 to 20, he'll have to pay 20% deviation charges. If it is in this range of 15 to 40, he has to pay 40% deviation charges. If it's greater than 20%, remember 100% deviation charges. So in DSM mechanism, deviations are not encouraged. And you can go through this presentation and you will find that there's similar cases for this underdraw, and also our program actually calculates it for this is for, let's say 1000, but let's say somebody's capacity was 2000. So then 12 schedule was 2000. Schedule is not capacity, schedule. Sorry, yeah. So schedule is 2000. Then 12% of that would be like 240 megawatts. So in that case, I have to look at this particular table and go by this set of logics to calculate the DSM. Now, certain amendments have come which gives some kind of advantage to the RE generation, because RE is difficult to control. So those limits are slightly enhanced. I think it will be for Maharashtra and Gujarat, it will be on the order of 200 to 250 megawatt. This, of course, I don't want to make a statement here. I'll just check it up and tell you. So the above calculations, what I did here is using this for RE rich states. There was also the sign change which is currently under abeyance. So what it says is that you got to change. Suppose this is your schedule and this is your drawal. So you are underdrawing, but you need to kind of break it up and come once in every 12 blocks. So this is the sign change which is there once in every 12 blocks. It was so there is a penalty if you don't do this, but all it says is that this is the schedule, but you are within this by plus minus 20. It will be accepted as you have broken the you have followed this rule. The penalty for such a case is 10% of those charges. So this is how our sample DSM would look like. I mean, you have a drawal after computation, and we give it at the end of the day. But all the calculations are done block by block, okay, and then all the summations are done, and this is how the energy figures are arrived at. This is the drawal schedule, this is the schedule, this is the drawal, and this is the schedule. So this is the deviation charges, capping charges, additional and sign change charges to give you the net DSM. All our information will be available on our website wrpc.gov.in. You can go to this commercial link and then you'll be able to find our DSM accounts. That's it from our perspective. I think this is good enough. I think I can take the questions if you want to. Otherwise, we can allow the next speaker to continue. Thanks a lot. I hope it was informative. Hello, Ashwin.
Yes, sir.
Just 1 second. There was a question, not in my session, but in Suni sir's session. Mm-hmm. I think somebody from Sangli, Jayant Nibale, or what, he had asked a question on the blackouts part of it.
Okay.
So how do we kind of treat the blackouts? So first of all, if there is a blackout, then the RLDC will declare that. Okay. And then the times will be declared by that. Okay. So then for that, there is this order which has come on the 9th of October 2019. Okay? So this order, I do not know whether you're able to see my screen, but this is a CRC order dated 9th October 2019. Okay. And that order specifies how you're supposed to do the exchanges. Okay. So there will be long-term and medium term, they will have a certain treatment. And for the bilaterals and exchange related, there will be another way of treatment. And let's take an example. Suppose there's a blackout in the western region and one generator is selling power to outside the region, for example. And that is, if it is in short term or if it's in bilateral, then how to deal with that. The philosophy is simple, that as far as the generator is concerned, during the blackout period, his actual generation will be replacing his schedule. So he's not paying any he's not paying any UI for that. And for the short-term bilaterals, I think he'll have to return money to the pool, okay, because he's already got the money from the pool, so he will have to do that return adjustments. And similarly for the buyer's side. So that was one question by, I think, Jayant, somebody asked from Sangli.
Okay.
So I just covered that.
Now we'll proceed with the session of Mr. Saxena ji. Before I proceeding, I would like to just inform very important thing. The presentation which was given by Satyanarayan sir was in the format of a pre-recorded presentation, and being a pre-recorded presentation, this platform has the speciality of uploading the pre-recorded presentations, and the speaker is also there. So the voice clarity, the breaking of the connectivity, all these issues get resolved. So this was a very good thing about the platform, which I wanted to say. Sir, you could proceed further. Saxena.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ashwin, and the organizers for giving this opportunity to present. I would just share my screen. It's a very short presentation. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the topic assigned is duties and role of LDCs in the smooth implementation of DSM. So I have a very short presentation. I'm kind of being elementary. Mr. Satyanarayan, Member Secretary, has covered in quite some detail how the computations and all are done. Of course, a lot of work is being done at the RPC level. So I would proceed with my presentation. So there are various fundamental consideration in accounting and settlement being done in the power sector. There are a lot of design considerations, right from the market model that has been the structure that has been adopted in the market, the kind of tariff, control area, energy accounting practices that are there, administration of transmission charges, applicable rates. Scheduling and dispatch is a very, very vital component, and the applicability of the deviation settlement mechanism and how you handle imbalances. Because imbalances are bound to happen, they are inadvertent, and they need to be settled. So, for example, the loss administration. So if you want to administer a market mechanism, loss administration, charges administration has to be done in a very seamless and a transparent manner. These must be known upfront so that people are able to participate in the market. They know what their obligations are, and system is administered in a smooth manner. So there are certain very fundamental questions which I would like to touch upon before moving ahead. People kind of ask why at all we need a deviation settlement mechanism. So this is a kind of fundamental question we keep coming across in many discussion forums and many platforms that we discuss. So just imagine a very, very simple system wherein you have a single seller and a single buyer. Life is very simple, very comfortable. You have one seller, one buyer, he has a PPA, he's supplying power against that contract, and you have a meter. The meter reads it. The electricity supplied, and you kind of very simply settle it, whatever has been supplied, easily done. We have come to a stage where now in the country, and of course in Maharashtra itself is a very, very vibrant state and one of the forward-most states in the country. And we have a situation where we have multiple sellers and multiple buyers. How do we settle transactions in such a scenario? Meter does not know the PPAs. Meter knows only the quantity of electricity. Electricity flowing through it is colorless and odorless. So you do not know under which contract what portion is flowing, what portion has been supplied under what contract, and what portion has been bought under what contract. So you can at best measure the total quantum of electricity supplied by a seller and the total bought by a buyer. How do you segregate into contracts? So the imperative is, if you are administering a market, you must schedule each and every transaction. And the transactions, the energy, the fundamentals of the energy must be settled based on the schedules. and schedules are of course aligned with the PPAs. Schedules themselves can be based on contracts which are single part tariff, single part contracts, or multi-part contracts. Single part contracts, they are energy only, so everything gets settled based on the schedule. If they are multi-part contracts, like we have under the ABT mechanism that Mr. Satyanarayan spoke about, you have fixed charges based on availability and the energy charges based on the schedules. Of course, electricity delivered is never exact, and on supply or purchase of all electricity under different contracts, you ultimately end up deviating from your total schedule. The net drawal and net injection schedules, they will deviate. There will be some amount of deviation, and this deviation needs to be settled based on a predefined deviation settlement mechanism where the rates are known and the mechanism is transparently known to everyone. At the interstate level, just to give you the size of the numbers across the country, we have more than 7,500 meters, interface meters, 250 control areas, and in the market, more than 6,000 participants are active across the country. So you need a very, very smooth and streamlined deviation settlement mechanism. This is the fallback of all market mechanisms. DSM is the fallback for all market trades. If somebody fails to deliver, it is under DSM that it happens, that it is settled. If somebody over-delivers, it is under DSM that gets settled. So DSM is the ultimate of fallback. Unless you have DSM, a smooth market cannot function. So it's a very, very important subject that is being deliberated today. Just a second. Yeah. So like I said, there are charges which are settled directly between the buyers and the sellers, which are capacity charges as per availability, energy charges as per schedule, and other statutory charges which are settled through the system operator. These include the charges for imbalance and the deviation. Imbalance or the deviation, that is what we say. And of course, the transmission charges, operating charges, and application fees. Transmission losses, there could be different models. Some places, they are explicitly transacted by the system operator. In our system, in the Indian context, these are to be paid in kind in the form of injection and withdrawal losses. Coming to the specific role of LDCs, starting with the role of National Load Dispatch Center, one of the fundamental things that we do here at the National Load, I'm working at the National Load Dispatch Center, Delhi. So fundamentally, one of the most important aspects that is taken care of for administration of the market is the transfer capability assessment and declaring it upfront in a transparent and a dispute-free manner. So transfer capability assessment is the key for declaring whatever margins are there. So all contracts are to be factored which are under long term, and thereafter residual is to be declared for the market trades to happen. Now, this is also essential to ensure that delivery as per contracts is able to take place. Unless you do this, secure operations may be difficult. We schedule at NLDC, we are responsible for scheduling for inter-regional links, and of course the transnational links of power with our neighboring countries. Energy accounting is of course the responsibility of NLDC as per the statutory provisions, and we are also responsible for scheduling of collective transactions to the day-ahead market and the real-time market. SCD is a recent phenomena that has been implemented since 1st April 2019, and 2016 we implemented the ancillary services. So these are new additions. Prior to that, NLDC was not directly involved in the scheduling aspect. Now with these additions, we are now involved in the scheduling of transactions directly as well at NLDC. Coming to the role of RLDCs, apart from the optimum scheduling and dispatch, monitoring of real-time grid operations, supervision and control over the interstate transmission system, RLDCs are also responsible for keeping accounts of electricity transmitted through the regional grid. So this is one of the statutory functions under the Act. So section 28(3), and likewise we have similar provisions for the SLDCs. So scheduling by RLDCs, again, there is a jurisdiction as per the Indian Electricity Grid Code as to who schedules what kind of stations, what transactions falls under the purview of which load dispatch center. So the RLDCs schedule the central generating stations except where the full share is allocated to the host state. The generating stations connected to the ISTS, and some generating stations which are connected to both ISTS and the state grid. And of course, the share of the home state is less than 50%. Ultra mega power plants are scheduled by the regional load dispatch center, and periodic feedback regarding the scheduling mechanism and the DSM is of course provided by the respective RLDCs also. In line with the statutory functions at the regional level by the RLDCs, we have similar functions by the SLDCs, which are responsible for the entire state grid operations, and of course keeping accounts of quantity of electricity transmitted through the state grid. So this is another important function that the SLDCs are supposed to carry out. With the implementation of DSM, the role of SLDC again becomes much more important with the state implementing DSM. Scheduling by SLDC is, of course, one of the key functions that is to be carried out to ensure secure and reliable operations. Demand estimation in coordination with STUs and DISCOMs. All entities who are participating in the state must be able to predict and forecast their demand, and then arrange for a balanced portfolio so that they procure power to meeting their obligations. SLDC also has jurisdiction over scheduling shares from the scheduling the state share from the ISGS, respective ISGS. They provide the requisitions. They schedule and dispatch their own generation inside the state based on various considerations like merit order, requisition by the DISCOMs, and what other transactions. And of course, they are also required to take care of the demand side management as well and regulating their net draw from the grid. Under the ABT mechanism, or the in fact its own extension is the DSM itself, there are certain roles that entities participating, especially the generating stations, are required to do. They are supposed to declare their capability faithfully, and of course they get the fixed charges based on that. Different DCs are required as per the IEGC. Then provisions are there to ensure that they deliver maximum during the peak and when the maximum power is required. They are to coordinate their planned outages so that the availability is ensured when the grid needs them. They are supposed to flex their generation depending on the frequency and respond to frequency changes, and minimize deviations from schedule, and generate as per dispatch advice to them by the concerned load dispatch center. In this case, I'm showing the slide of RLDCs because I'm trying to map on the experience at the regional level to what is to be done at the state level. The transmission utility has a very important role in providing the metering infrastructure. They are supposed to install SCMs as per the in accordance with the CEA regulations. Meter readings are to be ensured. Communication infrastructure is to be provided. If you are having AMRs, then of course data telemetry and all those issues are to be taken care of by the CTU at the interstate level, and a corresponding role must be carried out by the state transmission utility at the intrastate level. The RPC's role has been very, very elaborately explained by Member Secretary WRPC. Deviation settlement, reactive energy account, RRAS account, SCD account, congestion charge account, regional energy account, regional transmission. A host of accounts are issued by the RPCs. And of course, all the data, input data, metering, and providing them with the meter data, the scheduling data, any other relevant information that may be required for production of these accounts is provided by the concerned RLDC. As I understand, in the states, some of the states have implemented the State Power Committee, but some places the SLDC is assuming the role and issuing these accounts. The important point here is that at the regional level, we have the RLDC playing a statutory role, and of course the RPC also playing a statutory role in the process. So we have two independent bodies who are carrying out, who are associated in the entire scheduling, metering, accounting process. And in the process, there are checks and balances. If there is an inadvertent error by one agency, the other agency is there to correspondingly check. And of course, a third level of check, like was pointed out, was the participants are also allowed additional time, within which they can check and the accounts and respond back in case there are any inadvertent omissions or errors in the accounts. So this is the point of having multiple agencies look at the same process, and inherent checks and balances that get built into the system in the design process. We have a mechanism of decentralized interchange scheduling, wherein freedom is given to the market party players to schedule their transactions. They are free to buy and sell in the market from anywhere they want. And there is a specific role assigned to the system operator. So the economic decisions of procurement, of portfolio balancing, of causing economy at the individual entity level is carried out by the market players. They have freedom and choice. They can schedule the transactions, they can enter into any transactions, and they have the freedom to implement those transactions. So all that freedom to cause economy and all economic decisions lie with the market participants. However, from the system security perspective, the system operator has the final say in terms of the system security decisions, so the assessment of transfer capability. And of course, one aspect I missed mentioning while talking about the transfer capability assessment is the congestion management. Unless one declares the limits, the transmission limits, congestion management may really not be possible. So system restoration, ensuring system is in balance, ancillary services, rescheduling if required, curtailment, all these are security related decisions, and these are taken by the system operator. There is a timeline based on which the gate closure happens and the freedom to the market participants comes to an end at the time of gate closure. All decisions that before the gate closure, all decisions can be taken, all transactions can be revised, all changes can be made by the market players. But once the gate closes, which in our case is 1 hour ahead of the delivery period, at that interstate level, system operator takes over, sees and assesses whether the system is in balance, and if required, carries out additional measures such as redispatch or ancillary services dispatch, or such measures as required may be required for the ensuring the secure and reliable operation of the grid. So the fundamental difference the gate closure imposes has to be understood by the market participants as to up to what time they can revise the transactions and up to what time they can cause economy at their own level, and beyond which the decision window passes on to the system operator. Imbalance pricing is a dynamic vector now. We have had a history. A lot of it was talked about by the previous speaker, Mr. Satyanarayan, and it was earlier a regulated vector, in the sense the regulator used to give a price frequency-linked price vector, and it was sliding vector according to the frequency prevailing in the system. Those who helped the system gained from the DSM mechanism or the UI or the erstwhile UI mechanism, and those who went against the system were penalized. But the problem with that was that there was a regulatory lag in revising the DSM price vector, and this led to changes in the market wherein maybe the DSM price vector remained at a very low level, whereas the costliest generation became more expensive. So there was a need to make it dynamic, and this in 2019, this was actually linked to the market clearing price, the average market clearing price at 50 hertz, average ACP at 50 hertz, as discovered in the power exchanges, because that is the last formal price discovery that is happening in the system, and it was linked to that. Having said this, the 50 hertz price is fixed, and the upper and the lower limits at the are also fixed at the interstate level, and likewise similar provisions I understand have been provided in the Maharashtra DSM regulations also. And there is a frequency sliding rate also for the DSM vector, which then slides according to the frequency, the rate at 50 hertz getting fixed at the average ACP for that area. So having done this, the rate becomes now dynamic in the sense that it captures time, it captures frequency, it captures the geography. Once you're talking of area clearing price, if there is congestion in a particular area, then the price in that area goes up. So the 50 hertz rate goes up. So it captures geography, it captures time and space also in this thing. So in a way, we have a very, very sophisticated dynamic DSM price vector that has been implemented in the country. And this is, of course, also providing the incentive not to deviate, not to game the system because of any price differential that may be prevailing in the system. So, of course, we are unique in the sense that we have multiple power exchanges, and a certain formulation has been provided to ensure that the more robust price gets factored in the DSM. Even a weighted average provision is also there. And here in this, I would also like to mention that NLDC has been mandated to declare the DSM price vector on a day-ahead basis, and this is available on the website dsm.nldc.in. Daily in the evening, once the market trades have been declared, market prices have been declared, NLDC publishes the price vector for the next day, and this is available for anybody to download and take from the NLDC website also. Metering infrastructure is, of course, very crucial to the entire mechanism. At the interstate level, like I mentioned, 7,500 meters, weekly meter reading. Some places AMR has been implemented. And this is a humongous exercise. It's a huge exercise. But a tight timeline is there. Like already mentioned, Thursday, the RLDCs must pass on the meter readings to the RPCs for working out the accounts along with the schedule information. And detailed computation guidelines are there, master file, raw SEM data, processed SEM data, entity-wise active data, any discrepancies are there, all weekly losses. All this data is transparently made available for 4 weeks duration as per the regulation on the RLDC websites for any entity to go through and independently check and work out whatever they want to do with the raw data as well as the processed data. So checks and balances have been provided in a transparent manner for the entities. And I understand from the SAMAST report that was carried out by that was published by the Forum of Regulators in 2018, Maharashtra itself is no small state. Of course, we all know this. But in terms of the metering infrastructure size, more than 1,100 meters are there in 2018. I'm sure there must be much more. The figure is a slightly dated one. 2 years down the line, we may be having more entities there. There is a timeline as per which the energy various accounting statements are issued. RRAS, DSM, reactive energy account, and congestion settlement account are on a weekly basis, whereas reactive energy account, transmission deviation account, and now the more recent SCD account are on the monthly basis. Of course, settlement period is each 15 minutes period. And I think this I have already talked about and was covered by the previous speaker as well. The actual generation minus scheduled generation is for the speaker. This thing DSM, I think this part has also been covered. All regional entities are supposed to be registered with the respective RLDCs. Meter data is processed. It is transmitted from the respective substation. The entities are responsible. There is a detailed procedure. And time block wise frequency is also passed on by the RLDCs to the RPC. And the entire data along with the scheduling data is furnished by Thursday. Detailed role of RPC has already been talked about, so I would not labor on this slide. The timeline is pretty well known. It is almost like a 21-day cycle when the accounts are settled. Accounting week is Monday to Sunday. SEM data is downloaded latest by Tuesday. Data validation and processing over the next 2 days, and then pass on to the RPCs. And subsequent Tuesday, the RPCs publish the account. Due date is within 10 days. A 2-day grace period is allowed for receiving the payments, and thereafter the disbursement from the pool account is to be carried out. RLDCs are also operating the pool account. While the accounting statements are being issued by the RPCs, the pool accounts are operated by the RLDCs, wherein each entity pays into the pool and each entity receives money from the pool. No one-to-one correspondence can be established since it is a pooling mechanism. Here I would like to mention some related aspects that, of course, this is the concept of pool is slightly difficult to understand, and taxation authorities keep questioning as to whose income is this. And we also face a lot of music in terms of the taxation queries that we keep receiving while operating the pool accounts. A sample deviation statement, these are available on the RPC website. You can check the WRPC website for these statements. RPCs are also like RLDCs, RPCs are also providing the data in soft format, so account checking and everything can be done. The way forward is implementation of scheduling, metering, accounting, and settlement, SAMAST, as brought out by the Forum of Regulators in the true letter and spirit. Each entity must be demarcated in terms of its boundary must be established, electrical boundary must be established, and metering infrastructure must be put in place. Ex-ante scheduling must be there. Accounting system must be defined and simple and robust, and it should be scalable, dispute-free. Transmission charges and losses must be known upfront so that administration of the market mechanisms is simple. We must have open access clearing mechanism as well. Open access must be streamlined in terms of entities having freedom to apply for open access and have their transactions scheduled. Transparency is, of course, important if you want to have a dispute-free system. Integrity and probity accounts must be there. We must have a system of checks and balances. Disbursement and clearance must be done in a timely manner. The grid code provides for the highest priority for settlement of these pool accounts settlements, because there can be no delay, because a lot of other entities are dependent on the pool account payments. Payment security and risk mitigation mechanisms must be there. Of course, even in the pool account also, the CRC provides for PSM mechanisms. In the process, huge amount of data related to commercial settlement and accounting is prepared. This data must be utilized for any kind of analytics, maybe development of further refinement of further software, and all those things must happen. Adequacy of human resources in the load dispatch centers, in all of the entities wherein trained personnel are there. Of course, capacity building is an important aspect, of course. And like RLDCs and NLDC, SLDCs are also mandated to ensure and cause economy at the state level. So economic dispatch is the thing that is now being implemented across the country by NLDC, and there have been study groups under the Forum of Regulators, wherein Maharashtra also has been a part of it, and economic dispatch needs to be considered. And all said and done, while we are giving freedom to the market participants to carry out their economic decisions, the onus for ensuring secure and reliable operation lies on the state load dispatch center. So the state load dispatch center must have the tools, the regulatory provisions, and all other necessary means to ensure secure and reliable operations. So ancillary services is another area where a lot of work needs to be done by the SLDCs. And of course, the regulator needs to support in this regard. I think that is all from my side. Thank you very much for a patient hearing. Thank you. Any questions, I would be open to answer.
Thank you, sir. Before going forward the questions, I think Mrs. Satyanarayan would like to speak for a while. He wanted some opinions to be shared.
Right.
Sir, to you.
Ashwin, yeah, can you just repeat? I just missed what you were saying.
I said, sir would like to share his thoughts.
See, it was like I was sitting in the seminar in the earlier sessions, and certain queries were definitely raised by the participants, and some answers were definitely given. There was but still, it's something doesn't get fully addressed. So I just thought of just sharing a few more points. One thing is the problem of real-time SCADA and the energy meter, differences, which is basically the load dispatcher is kind of operating on a data which is not very, very concurrent, okay? Or rather, he takes a decision based on the SCADA, but the energy meters, which are more accurate, they tend to give a different picture. So this issue is under discussion in the RPC also, and we are trying to look at implementing it in the AMR. And a good thing is the Honorable Central Commission is also looking into it, and so this issue will get addressed shortly in the days to come, because we have flagged it before the Honorable Commission, and the Commission has taken cognizance of that. Okay. And another point which I just wanted to add, it's very difficult to add without the question being asked by anybody, but I can understand it's an afternoon presentation after lunch, so it's quite heavy. So the thing is, the days to come, what's very getting important is we are moving towards schedule-based management. So as far as the schedule of thermal generators or hydro generators is concerned, it can be very well planned, or nuclear also. But the renewable energy, and that too more predominantly wind, is a major challenge. And the forecasting for the wind, is where the efforts will have to go if the beneficiaries do not want to end up paying penalties. That is one aspect. Solar is still well predictable, but wind is a challenge in terms of prediction. Also, wind tends to come at a time it is kind of anti-load, like when the loads are coming down, the wind is going up, and when the vice versa is also not happening. So that's a problem, the demand side management with the renewables is going to pose a lot of challenge. And there is a need for, you need to have automated demand management systems in place. because these deviation charges can sometimes become quite high, and so this is the challenge, that is to come. And since it is within the state of Maharashtra, what I feel is what we discussed is the central aspects of the problem. Whatever organizational roles are there, like for example, RLDC declares a blackout, so definitely you will have the SLDC deciding whether it's a blackout or whether it's a partial restriction or whatever it is. And maybe you in the days to come, you all will also have to build up forums which will interact with the various participants within the state. And of course, the transactions beyond the state is addressed by the central rule, but the transactions within the state will be addressed by the state regulator and the state forums. Okay, so yes, these are the days of new challenges, and that's what POS system is all about. Like facing newer and newer challenges and gearing up to them. No system is perfect, but this is the best that we have. So good luck to all the players in implementing this. So these were some of the thoughts which I thought of concluding. Yeah.
Just coming out of the box, we are talking about 175 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2022, and today we know that the predictability on renewable, the solar and wind, is not that cannot be predicted. So
wind is unpredictable. Solar is still much better.
So with these keeping in mind, and we having about 175 gigawatts of power coming on the grid by 2022, which the government is very clear about, and they have been talking that yes, we will be achieving those targets. So how would we be able to handle it in future?
It is a challenge, it is not only India is getting renewables. Renewables are already there in some of the developed countries in Europe. So, the kind of technology transfers, will have to start taking place from them to, from people who are dealing with much stringent systems than ours. Okay. And there are players there who are in the business of prediction and who can, you have to tie up with them. That is one kind of a solution to the problem.
Right.
And another thing is challenges there. If life is no challenge, what to do?
Right.
And Indians are quite clever, and we can manage. We'll improve. That's.
Yeah, we have been called the country of Jugads.
Huh?
We have been called the country of Jugads also.
Yeah. True.
We have a question from Netra, probably the next speaker also.
Okay.
Yes, Netra.
So Satyanarayan sir and Samir sir, thank you so much for a very detailed presentation and very insightful presentation. And I must say that role of grid operator is really challenging. And we saw that on that 5th April, 9 p.m., 5 minutes lights off, how efficiently our grid operators manage the entire grid for India with the available resources. But recently, as Mr. Ashwin said, that we are looking at adding more and more renewables, and SECI is coming up with different tenders. And even the prices, prices discovered for those tenders are so low and so, so low that, it is very attractive for states to go for such renewable energy. But there are challenges with this balancing. So this low cost shouldn't just is the one part of energy, but everyone has to understand the cost of balancing as well. So my next topic is role of energy storage. So before I start, I would also like to hear from you. How do you see the role of energy storage in grid balancing?
Yeah, so I will first respond, then Samir can also respond. Storage is good. There's no doubt that storage is good. Okay. And storage, basically, you are looking at when you are having the unwanted time when the energy is pumping, then you don't push it to the grid. You store it at some place. And when, see, there's this timing. The wind is doing a wonderful job. Everything is fine with the wind except his timing. Okay, his timing is not. He's like a hero, but he's behaving like a villain in some sense. Okay, so now the thing is, if we can store his energy, okay, and convert him to a hero, like, I mean, when he's not there, but his role we play through the storage. So wind alone will not maybe able to do it, but wind plus storage is a good combination. Okay, that is my prima facie insight, and we are only hopeful. I mean, we see mobile phones, for example, so many years ago when it first came, the heavy rates and of the mobile phones and the calling and all that stuff. But today, even our housemaid is having 2 phones. Okay, so when the market opens up, and then it kind of starts putting pressure on the intelligence to discover cheaper, better ways, of doing things. And that might completely change the scenario. And we should never forget that coal reserves are not going to last infinitely. Okay, so coal reserves are going to end. And so therefore, it should not happen that we have our humanity and our development has vanished the coal, and to the future generations, we are saying that, I mean, just imagine the grid, if it is only going to run only on solar power, though the nights will be the jungle. I mean, the city will not have a night at all. So we are trying to bring the night. So batteries are coming, all those kind of things are coming. So that fight is going on. So I would personally very much give a lot of importance to this battery storage, and also to another old concept of pump storage. So pump storage plants are also very important. And particularly when the differentials are high. Now unfortunately, the DSM mechanism has come wherein at some stage at 50.05 it is much easy to pump. The deviation charges are 0, for example. Okay, so and then you can use it at a time when the deviation charges are much higher. But pump storages always have other kind of real restrictions, and that's going to cause problems. Like, I mean, it's related to irrigation, it's related to so many other. We have a good solution but a bad implementation. So wo ho jata hai. But definitely I'm positive on this, because wind plus storage is a good source of energy. That's my comment on your question.
Yeah, so while largely I agree with Satyanarayan sir, and the one thing I would like to say, probably I read it from one of my mentors. I think it's an echo. So one of my mentors probably mentioned it to me. How did storage come into existence? Actually, what I understood was that it came when nuclear actually came in. Nuclear was inflexible in the sense it used to generate flat, but the demand curve is not like that. It had variations. So how do you balance nuclear? Nuclear posed a problem on the other side of the issue. So probably pump storage came into existence, wherein water was pumped to balance probably nuclear at that point in time. Now we have a situation where the generation is varying, and probably we need storage to balance it. It's a good proposition. It is being tried all over the world. Only thing is we have to find out as soon as it becomes viable. You see, renewable was not acceptable to a large number of players so long as it was very costly. Now that the competition has brought down the prices, so like this, storage also, it would come down slowly, and it would have much more adaptability, and it would be adopted a lot in a large scale way. So we just have to wait and watch. It's definitely a good proposition to use storage.
Yes, Mr. Binoy.
Hi, good evening. My question is to Mr. Samir. This is on the status of the National Open Access Registry, this electronic platform. What is the status currently?
The current status is that the award has been placed in May, and development activities are going on, and hopefully by middle next year, sometime in June or July, we hope to go live with the registry. In fact, the registration, since this is going to be a migration from the existing short-term open access software to the National Open Access Registry, we would start opening the registration module, wherein all our participants would be required to register in parallel in this registry also, sometime before the end of this year itself, so that the registration process starts and we are able to migrate seamlessly as and when the date comes. So the registration process would start sometime before the end of this year. That's what I'm hoping.
And what about the integration with SLDCs?
Yeah, integration with the SLDCs, we are providing for, SLDCs have, many of the SLDCs have already come up with a lot of their own software developments, and different mechanisms have been implemented at different SLDCs. So it is practically difficult to integrate each and everyone into this direct hard integrate, or let us say tight coupling of the softwares. So we have provided for standard data exchange protocols, API-based data interchange would be there, and simple call and put procedures would transfer data between the SLDC, whatever software they may be using that can communicate with the open access registry without any manual integration or double punching of the data.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah.
So I guess, do we have any other questions from the audience? If not, we would move with the next session. I'm not seeing anybody who's raised hands. I have one, Mr. Dawale here.
Good afternoon,
yes,
sir.
Mr. Dawale.
Yes. Sir, I have one question regarding if any generator trip on any time, that time the schedule generation is equal to, suppose schedule generation and declare capacity is the same. But due to the tripping of the unit, actual generation is 0, and unit takes maximum 1.5 hours to come on the bar. That times, what is the deviations? Again, I want to revise my DC, but it is applicable in 4th block.
Shall I respond?
Yes, sir.
You see, first of all, none of the activities is 100% risk-free. Generation is under competition, right? So some degree of risk you are going to carry. So maybe 1 hour, 1.5 hours, it does happen. It can happen. And this is why I had clearly explained to you during my presentation, I talked about the gate closer concept. There has to be a closer time before which economic decisions in the terms of revision of schedules, revision of DCs can take place by the entity, market participant, or the individual generator. But thereafter, system security has to take over. If the things are kept fluid and dynamic and everybody is allowed to change to the last minute, system operator cannot decide what state the system is in and take corrective action to ensure system secure and reliable operation. One part. Second part, there are other ways to hedge this risk. Of course, there is a risk. If it is unmanaged, it causes a loss to the participant. If there is a method to manage the risk and cover your risk, probably you can benefit out of it. So for the present, some of the generators who are, for instance, this was there in the collective transactions also, and people selling in the collective transactions were facing this risk, this kind of risk. So presently, they are able to buy power in RTM, and they are able to make good their position, so that their risk to a large extent gets covered. Ultimately, soon we'll have financial contracts also. So possibly, as we go along, there will be more instruments to cover the risk. So possibly schedule revision, what we are looking at as the only way to cover your risk, probably there will be more instruments to cover the risk soon.
Now, I would just like to add one more sentence to what Samir Chandra just added. See, the fact is, your question, you admitted that your DC you cannot change, barabar? Okay, and your schedule also you cannot change, okay? But your actual has changed, right? So therefore, you will be paying the DSM. Your deviations will come into the scenario, okay? The rest, of course, is once you start changing, then things will move. Put it this way, there are 96 blocks in a day and there are 365 days, okay? How many times this has happened? How many times this has happened? Once or twice it has happened. So you will take a small hit. But if it is always giving you 99% plus of the time working fine, I think it's a good system. There will be a hit. You will get a DSM for that particular time. But as an engineer, can you avoid a generator tripping? No. It will happen. So we have to face it like that.
Right. Any other question, Mr. Dawale, you have, or I proceed with the next question?
My next question is related with this. due to the zero generation, DSM charges is a huge amount. How can I avoid this?
You can't avoid.
I have to pay the.
You cannot avoid. I'm going on the scooter and somebody came and pushed me. What can I do? It is not my fault. The generator did not. Did you trip the generator? No. Suppose there is a fire. As an engineer, you have to trip. Who is the smarter one? The engineer who is supposed to trip the machine is should be powerful, or the commercial man should be powerful? You tell me. The engineer has to be powerful. And when the engineer is powerful, the commercial fellow will just place his fine and go away. We have to accept.
I have to.
Yeah, it's a reality you have to accept.
It means during this 3 blocks, DSM charge is applicable. There is no chance to revise the DC.
We can't change system for that, no? I mean, the system is there.
Okay, sir.
Ultimately, not 100% risk free. Like Satyanarayan sir also has said, it is nothing is 100%.
Correct.
Okay, let me take the next question from Manoj Gupta.
Good afternoon. I just want to put another question in the same line. Suppose there is a failure of grid in between, we are from solar, and to such type of loss, say DSM, because of grid failure, who will bear the cost? How will the DSM will be settled down in this case?
Yeah, I think I told this question, and I have also in this group, I have just now circulated one order of the Honorable Commission. See, this is an issue, boss. You know, you are solar, you are a new player, but I'll tell you in the July 2012 blackout, there was a transaction going from Maharashtra generator, private generator, to eastern region. Okay. Now what happened is the July 2012 blackout, the entire country, western region survived. So this generator is not aware, he went on generating the power. And the load side, which is in the eastern region, it is completely dark. He has not drawn the power. So who has to pay? You know, these kind of chicken and egg problem comes, you know, in the power sector, and over a period of time, it's a difficult problem. So the transactions are adjusted as per the long term and the medium term, and then the bilaterals and the exchanges. Okay. So वो वाला जो order है, it tells how to do that. A generator, I think, should not be worried. If the load dispatcher declares that as a disturbance, then his schedule, he is not going to pay any UI. But the question is what to do for the bilateral or short-term transactions or exchange. So then he has to clear, he has already got the money, that money he has to return back. And for the long-term and medium-term, I think it is pro-rata adjusted. So I would suggest you please go through that order in detail. It is giving so many cases. So I think that will resolve most of your issues. But if you still have any other new issue on that, you can even flag it to your commissions.
I have a question from Mr. Girish Balku, who says, what if generating unit trips on grid problem? Who will suffer on account of deviation?
Generator suffers due to grid means how can the generator suffer? Some line has tripped. I mean, see now what has happened, you know, in the earlier days it was only full Maharashtra. Okay, so Maharashtra had its generation, Maharashtra had its transmission, Maharashtra had its load. Okay. And then if subsequently all this, you know, the social structures change, and now we have a Transcom, we have a Discom and a Gencom, and today an RPC is actually kind of setting their relays for both of them. They were one entity. You know, it's like my head, my brain and my liver, you know, different parts are there, and somebody is at a gain and somebody is at a loss. But if it is a blackout, I mean, if it is attributed that it is a blackout of that particular station and his DSM requires to be changed, RLDCs at the central level and SLDCs at the state level are having the power. And once they declare that, they will say that from this time to this time, there is a disturbance as far as this DSM mechanism is concerned for this generator unit. Then the treatment of that will be for the center, at least as per the CRC regulation. Similar things can be done for the states also. But then, you know, everything will not get addressed here. That much also I'm fully aware. No?
Right. I have another question from Mr. Vijay Dhali. Sir, if a generator trips and will come on bar after 8 hours, then schedule will be 0 from 4th block. In this case, how to manage auxiliary power?
How to manage ancillary power means you can get from the Unless the grid completely has not collapsed, complete all India blackout nahi hua hai, so the whatever available generators will there, the load dispatchers will coordinate the extension of that startup power to that generator. I'm assuming a thermal generator. I mean, the nearest point he will get charged and he can draw from the grid.
Yeah, he is probably from Adani Electricity Mumbai. So I think these are the distributors for electricity in Bombay.
Yeah, but then the question is not from Adani perspective. The question is a general one, and whether it is Dahanu, let Dahanu trip or let anybody trip for that matter. And the answer is general, है ना? तो उसमें कुछ नया नहीं. See, the commercial को 2 मिनट के लिए भूल जाओ, technical पे आ जाओ. Technically, the load dispatchers will give you the power. क्यों समीर जी, am I right?
Absolutely correct, sir. Absolutely correct, sir. That can be facilitated. Of course, startup supply is always extended, sir.
How will deviation change will be calculated? Deviation charges will be calculated.
See, very simple. You cannot change the schedule up to 4 time blocks. So whatever schedule you gave, that is your schedule. Whatever is your actual is 0. Definition of deviation is actual minus schedule. So that is the deviation. And then there were those formulas which I gave in the slides for the central sector, at least that is the mechanism. So there is no change, nothing happens. Let there be disturbance, blackout, this, that, if the system will go smoothly.
Right.
It's not going to say, oh my God, there is this thing I need to change. No freaking out. It goes by a standard set of rules.
Right. This is the same thing which happened today morning when the senior government officials were not available. The system has already shooted out emails. The system has already gone and did the work because we had put everything on the system. And I received calls saying that I'm not participating, I'm not coming. Why am I receiving mails? I said, sir, it's a system.
Yes.
The same way.
Yeah. I mean, the system is quite robust and rigid. I would only again and again highlight that please, आपका errors दिख गए तो you track your RLDC website. RLDC और हमारा answers में सिर्फ nuclear का generation भी आपको day wise मिलता है, hydro का भी मिल जाता है, तो you will be able to find your DSM schedules and आपका meter reading आपके पास भी है. And you know it very well. And let me tell you one thing, the constituents are not the beneficiaries, the private players, they're all very smart people, Ashwin ji. They know the errors and they are also, I'll share my experience. Positive errors are reported, negative errors are not reported. You know, like, I mean, if I make a mistake in my calculation,
I know.
You get it, yeah.
I have been dealing with thermal power plants from long years. So
Yes.
I know. Yeah. I have another question which says, what if generator has to be withdrawn due to transit problem? For example, if there is a hot spot in the transformer or transco slide, will the generating plant be face DSM penalty?
Yeah, that is, see, now the thing is, again, I'll try to attempt and Samir can correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm trying to say is the engineer in you will function in a certain way. Okay? There is a hotspot. As an engineer, you know what to do, whether it is ultra urgent, because the IEGC clearly gives you the full freedom to disconnect an equipment if it is to save the life of that equipment.
Absolutely.
Okay. But if it is not, I mean, in WR we have a rule. If anybody does this so moto, then in the OCC forum, he has to come and justify why he did that. You know, we don't allow just a unilateral band kar sakte ho. See, everybody feels my baby is very important and this is most urgent and you cannot go on tripping the grid. So there's a check and balance on that. Having said that, the next point is that you decide that I can do it immediately or not. So the next thing you have to do is to take a code from the RLDC if it is in his control area or the SLDC if it is in his control area. Get a code, remove it, attend to your problems, because you very well know as an engineer that the transient fault, and if you allow your equipment to run under that kind of a condition, there could be a great risk to the very asset which you are trying to save. The DSM charges would be peanuts as compared to that. So you got to take that particular call, whether it requires immediate attention or not. So you have to flag it up in this manner. You have to go to the SLDC if you are under the SLDC or RLDC. I think this particular presentation mostly to be for the SLDC. So they will have to flag it to the SLDC, take a code and then open it up so that the SLDC can also prepare for the grid management from that perspective, and also start attending to the fault, and then within 4 time blocks change your DC, etc. and do that. That's it.
Right. There's another question. I think there may be one or two which are coming together. How accounting of this DSM charges will be done? Mean how to make provision?
What provision? I mean, the question is not very clear. I mean, I would just like to repeat that you take the map. I mean, 4 time blocks are there. Your schedule was 100. Your actual is 0. So 100 minus 0 is your deviation. That's it. And the table of the rules are there. So you know how much you're going to pay or receive. So the question is, again, I think it's some repeat of the old question, similar question.
Maybe. I think Mr. Raju is there. He wants to ask.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Raju.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
I mean to say, suppose I am paying some amount as a DSM charges, how I make the provision in my accounts, books of accounts. So from where I get this amount?
Sir, may I intervene, sir? तो चालान का कैसे प्रोविजन करते हैं?
चालान?
So, ऐसे ही है ये DSM is like चालान for your deviation. So you're not supposed to deviate intent. If you are able to make provision for your चालान, you should be able to make provision for your DSM. That means you are intentionally deviating from the schedule. So then only you can make provision. Otherwise, DSM is supposed to be inadvertent. You are not supposed to deviate. So please think over. It is not supposed to be advertent deviation. You are only supposed to inadvertently deviate. And once it is established that it is only inadvertent, then of course it becomes just a payment for settlement purposes. It is not something you deliberately.
Yeah, in fact, this is actually, I would just like to add, this is exactly the crucial difference between ABT and DSM in some sense, if you see. The ABT, like if the frequency is going down, you still had the right to draw the power. And so it is like breaking a signal, and if the police catches you, you say, this is your fine, you take the fine. It's commercially more cheaper for me to do, or better for me to do that. But we have evolved from that particular stage. And now we are saying that, you may afford the fine, but the country cannot afford this kind of problem because we are integrated now. So now we cannot take that risk. So you are not permitted. So now that kind of a right is not there. And this is going to happen. I'm telling you, this is the way forward because we are moving towards developed countries. We are moving in that direction only, and we will go slowly towards a more disciplined kind of system operation.
Yeah, we also faced the problem, similar kind of problems when we implemented GST in our country. The systems were not working. I myself had paid a penalty of 6,000 rupees for the government systems not happening. But finally, government returned the money back. So if the systems are not fine or there are some deficiencies in the system, we will resolve them. But if we have to think forward and move forward for betterment of the country, then we have to take a forward step. And I feel DSM is the next forward step which the country has to take for the grid.
Yeah.
I think we have 2 more questions. One is from Mr. Balki. Sir, suppose if there is a major problem in grid and the generator is asked to ramp down his unit rapidly, and then should we worry about the volume limit in violation? Who will bear the deviation charges in this case?
Samir, can you take that question?
Yeah, if you have to ramp down rapidly, I think exceptionally, if there is a grid issue, then that is certified as a time for the interruption in the grid. So probably that gets taken off here by the mechanism already member secretary has specified.
Okay.
That is not a big issue, I think. That should not be a very big.
Okay. Another question from Atul Vijay. In DSM penalty is thinking on commercial manner and not thinking as in, say, considering technical aspect in electricity business is only considering commercial technical.
Again, a philosophic question, I would put it. See, this is an opinion. Whoever is asking that, it is a thought that has come in his mind, and that is what he might feel, and he is quite justified in thinking whatever he wants to think on that. So we ourselves have also faced similar things that aajkal to grid kafi commercial bante ja raha hai over the period of time, like in the early 90s it was not so commercial, it was more technical, let's put it that way. And nowadays, it is commercial is playing a big role, and one has to be commercially viable. We cannot, technically is all great, but then at the end of the day, the bank balance matters, no? At the end of the day, it matters.
Right.
You know, you will not get loans if you are having a very poor bank balance, you know. So some of these socialistic kind of concepts are having these drawbacks. But this is all a human problem. It's not just an Indian problem. It's a human problem, you know. So like, so that we are not entering the DSM. We are entering into the philosophy kind of an area where each one is entitled to his opinion. Yes, commercial factors are playing a role, but I do not think that, at least in the emergencies, at least technical is definitely there, playing the superior role when it comes of safety or the overall equipments thing. But chota mota day to day may commercial play. So it's like a relationship in a family. You know, the husband takes the major decisions, the wife takes the minor decisions. Yeah, you cannot say no to that. You know? So commercial and technical भी वैसे कुछ तो है. But it's a philosophical question. Yeah.
Okay.
Just adding one small point here. I would say that electricity is a very, very special commodity. Exact delivery of electricity for the contracted quantum is only a coincidence, and that too a very rare one. By nature, there is going to be some deviation, however small, some deviation is bound to happen. And the DSM mechanism is just to take care of commercially settling that small quantum of variation that is because of the inherent nature of the product as such, it is always present. So it is a scientific mechanism. I should not say it is just purely from a commercial perspective. Large deviations, of course, there has to be a commercial disincentive also not to cause large deviations. But if you say that an entity is in all its good faith and everything, it's doing its best to control its deviation, then also there will be small quantum of deviations, and these need to be settled. And a commercial mechanism must be available to settle these transactions. So I would rather say that this has its origin in the technical considerations more rather than simply commercial and seeing it as a pure commercial mechanism. This is a technical requirement also to settle these. And of course, the extraordinary circumstances, those are different.
Okay, let us answer the last questions for the day. How generator industries will take gain of DSM when frequency is below 4.5 hertz?
Shall I answer?
Yeah. We both will answer because this is the last question. You answer first, I'll answer next. Okay.
Right, sir. So, you see, there can be no runaway gains out of this. That is why the volume limits have been provided, and I just went through cursorily to the Maharashtra regulations also. There are volume limits beyond which there are penalties, and there are frequency limits also beyond which there are penalties. So you are by design required to stay close to your schedule. Under exceptional circumstances, there can be deviation, but then exceptional circumstances have exceptional methods to deal with those kind of situations. So by design, you cannot have runaway gains out of this. That is my understanding.
It also, I will answer him. It's like this, that when this ABT era was there, we had many generators coming up. Generators were coming in this. The system was quite profitable, and recovery of the entire cost of the plant was also taking place in a very short or phenomenally short amount of time. But in every market, the early bird gets the worm, as I kahavat hai. And the later ones, they generally tend up you won't get, the market will not be that green, it will be more challenging. And so the generator, those days, the fixed cost recovery was pretty fast because the variable cost from the UI was there. But nowadays, that is largely, by and large, it's fairly much, I don't think it's that green. So we are now no longer going in that kind of a deviation and adjustment, but the whole perspective has changed, particularly after the July 2012 blackout, and so now the perspective is you meet your schedule, and just you be more scheduled. That's what this entire mechanism is trying to teach us. Be scheduled have a plan for the generation, have a plan for the load, forecast it as much accurately as you can. Try to enter into the, even wind generation. If you're a wind generator, you should forecast on your generation. The days is not far when you will be also, getting some kind of, incentive based on your correct forecasting. So it is the march is moving on forward, and as a generator, I would say that I will do a proper overhauling schedule. I will do a proper plan schedule. I will ensure that once I come on bar, I'm always there on bar to the extent possible, so that my DC is maximum. And then I operate it in technically as per the requirements of whatever has been put upon me by my beneficiaries, and I will respond to that at the appropriate ramp rates. I'll have my governors in place. Okay, so that is the way you will have to look if you are a generator. If you are an RE wind generator, ठीक है, RE forecasting has still not come in a big way, but then those are not far when you will also have to do all your own kind of adjustment. You cannot say that, okay, I cannot do. A day is going to come. You'll have to start from today, maybe couple of years or months later. We do not know how long, but the regulations will come. If you're a load entity and you want to do the DSM, you have to take care of the load variations. In the morning we were seeing some presentation, we were saying that this 1% is too small and too tight, etc. But unless, if you're pushed into this challenge, nobody is going to respond to that challenge. So that as a load, as a DISCOM, I would say that he will have to do a very conscious planning of his costs, and he will have to look not just at the variable cost. Perhaps he will have, the days will come when you will put up to the regulator and say that I need to look at the totality of the cost, not just this fixed cost or variable cost or transmission cost. Total cost I'll have to see and do that kind of management. So everybody is having a role to play, and you have to understand that and accordingly do that. So that's it.
Okay. Sir, I will not take the questions further, but I will leave the audience to write their questions on the WhatsApp group, which is going to be live for next 2-3 days. And whatever queries they have, they can be asked on the WhatsApp group. But I would request that participants to not say good morning, good evening, or well-wishing messages or forwarding unwanted corona messages, but stick to the point of the group. If not, I may have to stop the participants to answer the questions also. So since we are committed to time, I will take this session to the next level, and we will end this session. I'll thank Satyanarayan ji and Saxena ji both coming as a helping hand and answering so many questions in the right directions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.